things working. Yeah, hello everyone, and maybe I should say welcome to Oxford, because I'm probably in the room the person who has been the longest here. Coecke, am I here longer than you? 2000.
From 2009.
Okay, by a stretch. And actually I've got an official position now in the Maths Institute. I'm some sort of visiting thing here, so I'm sort of at home here a little bit. So yes, I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit more, because people sort of got lost of where I am. Most people actually think I live in Cambridge for some reason these days. So for a long time I was a professor at Oxford in computer science, not in maths. So we built this big group there, quantum group, which was pretty much the first big applied category theory group in the world, and then I don't think any other group has ever gotten to that size. But there was few people there in that group at the time. You see Sean there, you see Robin Lawrence, who's also involved in this consciousness stuff. You see Harry is going to talk today, you see Camilo is going to talk today. And so this activity kind of started there, this mathematics for consciousness, in collaboration with some people here in the Maths Institute like Coecke. And okay, I'm going to get back to that later. So I stopped being a professor at Oxford for all kinds of reasons. I'm still affiliated. I became first chief scientist at Cambridge Quantum. That's why people think I moved to Cambridge, but I never moved. I got this beautiful building on Beaumont Street, which Johannes was referring to, where first this workshop was going to take place. But the rooms are a bit small for this audience. And then Cambridge Quantum stopped being, because they sort of merged with part of Honeywell Quantum Systems. The Honeywell Quantum System is secret in the basement had been building quantum computers. So they broke away from Honeywell, and then we created this thing which is called Quantium, which is now the biggest quantum computing company in the world. And I'm chief scientist. And I also have a group in Oxford, based in this Beaumont building. And now you can see, also Sean is working there, and Harry is working there, and Robin is working there. So they all moved with me, and lots of other people moved with me. So it's a fun place to be, and there's lots of other people here on the picture who are in the room here. I think Hamza is somewhere here, Leah, Zin are all here, but they can all tell you about the stuff we do there. Right, this is our logo. Wearing this t-shirt. So I mean, this is a C for compositional like a category theory. This is an I for intelligence, like as in artificial intelligence. So we're doing compositional intelligence, quantum inspired, if you want to say. We don't put the word artificial because there's really no reason why intelligence study should be about the artificial alone. Why would it be? I mean, and so we do compositional intelligence, and of course it also looks a little bit. It also looks a bit like a cube for quantum, and then, but unfortunately, it's such a beautiful design. It also looked like a skull. There was really nothing we could do about that. Okay, move. Oh, maybe this was a power button. Okay, yeah. Oh, this is the beginning of my talk. What's happening here? Okay, manual. Okay, now you know what you're gonna get. That's actually pretty cool. That's really cool, actually. I actually like it. There we are. You know, you're moving again now? Ah, yeah, you're moving again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about compositional quantum language to start, because that's really where all my stuff started. And this very much with this paper, which is called The Categorical Semantics of Quantum Protocols, with Samson Abramsky. And what this paper was an attempt initially to reformulate quantum mechanics pretty much from the ground up, starting from nothing, abstractly, in category theory terms, but with composition being the sort of first-class citizen. So everything was about composition. We used monoidal transfer categories, and then we say how much structure do you need to add to actually do something. We basically just added like compact structured cups and caps and a dagger. And we were able to derive a bunch of stuff like quantum teleportation and some other stuff. Most of linear algebra engineering, quantum mechanics was definable in those terms. And it was kind of a paradigm shift from I don't know, almost 100 years of obsession with measurement in quantum mechanics. Every philosopher, everybody was obsessed with measurement. And actually Schrödinger in 1935 or something said, actually the most important ingredient in quantum mechanics is composition, not measurement, which got completely ignored until pretty much this paper. pretty much this paper, nobody actually followed up on this idea to emphasize composition. Now, I mean, this was supposed to be written for a physics audience, and physics audience aren't particularly good in monoidal categories, especially at that time. So fortunately, there's a person here in Oxford called Roger Penrose who started drawing pictures in the 60s or 70s as an undergraduate because he didn't like tensor notation. So he started drawing pictures, and then there was some great category theoreticians like Joel and Strait basically proved that Penrose's pictures and the monoidal categories are actually the same thing. So you can basically forget about this category theory in the way you present it all as pictures, and this is sort of what I did in this paper, kindergarten quantum mechanics. It was the same as the paper with Sampson, but all in pictures, and we sort of then provocatively stated, well, maybe we can turn all of quantum mechanics in pictures, which is the same statement as turning all of quantum mechanics in compositional terms. It's the same thing. Picture, compositional term is exactly the same sort of statement in this context. Okay, 13 years later, there is this book with Alex Kissinger, which was the textbook of the course I used to teach, and Alex is now still teaching in computer science, the quantum computing course, and everything is done with pictures. And we, of course, it's a big book because we also explain how the pictures relate to Hilbert space. We actually derive Hilbert space from the pictures in this book and stuff like that. It's a very big book, but it's a university level book, I would say. It's a university level book. It's not kindergarten quantum mechanics, not at all. Do you have to say anything more about it? No, so lots of people here in the room actually took that course. Lots of people had that course at computer science. Okay, 5 years later, and we're basically now 2023. There is this other book here, Quantum in Pictures, with Stefano Gogioso, a former student of mine. And so this pretty much has the same content as the very big book. There is one difference: you don't need to know any maths to read that book. It's basically written such that without any maths prerequisites, you can actually learn quantum mechanics, and in a way that's I would say more foundational and more deep than you would learn in a standard textbook, for which you actually do need a lot of math background. So we went from like complicated abstract category theory to something which is now probably an educational tool to bring quantum computing and quantum technology to the masses. And that's why actually my company, my company, Quantinuum, they published it so that we had full control over the thing and whatever we're going to do with the thing. That's the reason. I mean, it's not easy if you're not a publisher to publish the first book, I can tell you that, but it was interesting, okay, so that's Quantum in Pictures, it's available on Amazon. Unfortunately at the moment it's not available on Amazon in all countries, sometimes you have to go to your neighbor to order it. Because the cheapest way, we go to get them as cheap as possible, and the cheapest way is to actually let them print by Amazon themselves locally. But they don't do it everywhere. If you live in Belgium, you have to go, and it's a really bad thing to do, you have to go to Holland and order it. It's really bad. And Belgians don't do that, so the book is not sold at all in Belgium. But you can go to France too, by the way. Okay, so, now, I mean, just to show you one review, some people know Dan Gika, I guess, in the audience. So this is a review from Dan Gika's 10-year-old son. Very clear, very well structured. Easier to understand than science YouTube videos. This may be a slightly biased review, given it's Dan Gika's son. Okay, and because the kids don't actually read books anymore, soon we will be releasing an entire video series of the entire book, and that's for free. I mean, the book is very cheap. If you buy it on Amazon, but these of course all for free. It will be on YouTube, the whole thing, in terms of lectures, and lots of, like Hans was here in the room, he gave a few lectures, and some other people too. Right, so I'll take you a little bit to the language in this, wires and boxes. So the language we use, and we've been using since 2005, is that systems, whatever systems you can think of, are wires, and processes on these systems are boxes. Like in quantum mechanics, you can think of this as like quantum particles flowing in these wires, and these boxes things that act on classical particles, quantum particles. This could also be data in your computer, This could be a computer program, this could be food, this could be some cooking recipes, so this can be pretty much anything. Of course, it's compositional theory, so you can compose these boxes, and that's the main mathematical operation. And then things get really interesting. I'm going really fast. It's not the speed of the book, I can tell you that. And I'm already 20 pages further now. things get really interesting when actually you start using things you have, like a wire, to build new things. And for example, what you can do is you can bend your wire like this, like a cup shape. You can bend your wire like this, like a cap shape. And then you can now think of this as a system, and this as a system, and this as a system. So suddenly it becomes like a complicated protocol involving three systems. We have the notion of state. The notion of state is really when you got something without an input and outputs, here two outputs. So this would be a two-system state. In quantum terms, this represents the Bell state. You can think of this as a perfect correlation in terms of probability theory. And this would be the corresponding testing that you're actually in that state. And then, so here this becomes suddenly a non-trivial equation. This is all we used in the 2004 paper with Samson, and we started to write a bunch of stuff just from this. It's really all we used there, nothing else. And then you can start doing interesting things, like you take a box and you slide it along the line, and in linear algebra terms, this actually means moving from this to its transpose. Like this 90 degree rotation is really just taking the transpose. Okay, and then with nothing more, you basically sort of derive quantum teleportation. You've got Alice on one side of the galaxy, Bob at the other side of the galaxy. Alice has a certain quantum state, and then Alice does this particular test after they have this shared quantum state. This is so old stuff, that's why I'm going so quick about it. It's not the core of the talk. And then you can basically just, you can basically just slide this box along this wire, and the box side ends up at the other side, and I should qualify, this is called post-selective quantum teleportation. I mean, I was talking to Zeilinger last week, and he got the Nobel Prize for teleportation, but this is really what they do. They do post-selective quantum teleportation in their optics lab. Right. Okay, so already here, with this sort of machinery, you can start talking consciousness, which these people did, the two organizers of this workshop. They took these wires and stuff like that, which we call this process theories, these boxes and wires. So in the book with Alex, we call this process theory, and Sean and Johannes, they basically took IIT and then they turned it into a process theory. So this language is already very rich for the sort of subject of this conference. Okay, now I'm going to enrich the language, because these wires and boxes you may be able to do IIT, but you can't do quantum theory for long. Probably not IIT for long either, I guess. I don't know. But these guys go on the cover of New Scientist with that sort of word, by the way. It's true. Wow. Okay. Right. So what we're going to do now is generalize. We're going to generalize the notion of a wire. Because a wire is a rich and abstraction, but we also don't want to move away from this nice and elegant idea of a wire and working with wires. So we're going to try to understand what a wire is. A wire is a thing which connects two endpoints. Right? A wire is a thing which connects two endpoints. And if you now want to give some sort of axiomatics of what you can do with wires, then you would come up with the following equation. That if you connect two pieces of wire, you get a Gann wire. That's sort of the equation. If you try to understand what can you do with a wire, then I think there would be one extra equation, which is if you connect the two endpoints with themselves, then the wire is gone. It's just a loop, and you can't connect any further anymore. So this would be the axiomatic theory of wire, I would say. Anyway, so a wire is a thing which, if you connect two wires, the endpoints of two different wires, then you get again a wire. Right? Now, so this is spider, and the spider is very much like a wire. There's one difference, as you see, there's many endpoints. In this case 8, but I mean, it's not very sort of ethical, but we also consider spiders with 7 legs, or 6, or 5, or 1, or 0, or mutants with 25 legs, for example. So we're very liberal in the kind of spiders we consider. And what do spiders do? If you connect two spiders, they again become a spider. Exactly like the wires. Exactly like the wires. And that's the axiom governing spiders. If you plug spiders together, you get another spider. And now, for quantum mechanics, we actually need two kinds of spiders, which we color. these are very unfortunate thoughts, like red and green because of color blindness. It turns out the case when Ross Duncan and I were coming up with these things, I had 2 pens, a red and a green one, and it just stuck, and it just stuck. That's really what happened, it just stuck. So, okay, we got 2 kinds of spiders. Let me say something technical here. These spiders, they have a very horrible name in mathematics. They have a name which is called Dagger Special Commutative Frobenius Algebras. Dagger Special Commutative Frobenius Algebras, going back to, it's disputed, either a paper of Levere or a paper of Carboni and Walters. No, not the Dagger, there was no Dagger and there was no special Dagger. We had to add Dagger and stuff like that, but roughly they go back to either Levere or Carboni and Walters. And and then we proved with Jamie Vickery at some point that these spiders are in one-to-one correspondence with orthonormal bases. So saying, defining such a spider within Hilbert space category, within category of Hilbert spaces, or picking an orthonormal basis of a system is the same thing. And so this means that if you take 2 families of spiders, this really corresponds to 2 orthonormal bases. And so this is a relation between orthonormal bases, and it's actually the relation of what people call in quantum mechanics complementarity or unbiasedness. That's what this equation. So what is the equation saying? If a green spider meets a red spider and they both hit each other like that, boom, they give a right hook to each other. You see, this one gives a right hook to the red one, this one gives a right hook to the green one, then there are not 4. Because spiders aren't very suited to give right hooks. That's sort of the story. Right? Now, so I gave you 2, let me go back. So we got spider fusion, we got right hooks, like 2 legs vanish, and I'm now going to do a simple calculation, which people use in quantum computing, for example, and that's simplifying a quantum circuit. As it turns out, if you pick these spiders for 2 bases on 2-dimensional Hilbert space, then you can define C0 gates, which are some standard gates, just by connecting a green and a red spider. So here you got a circuit, so we got 3 qubits, 3 quantum systems. They can be classical too, they can just be classical bits too, because we don't use phases here. And we have a C0 gate, this is the control, and we have the circuit and we want to know, can we simplify it? This is a very trivial calculation. So what you see is 3 greens, 2 reds, they fuse, well, that was a fusion, 2 wires in the middle, they vanish, spider with 2 legs, well, that's just a wire. So I did a calculation on quantum circuits, just using the simple rules. And I mean, this is a totally stupid calculation, but I can say in quantum computing and quantum compilation, this is the state of the art. This is the best way to simplify quantum circuit now today. And then it's built in lots of quantum compilers. This technique is now inside quantum software. So it's not just an educational thing, it's actually cutting edge technology thing. Right. Now to go quantum, you actually have to decorate these things with phases. So like here I use moon phases, but usually people think in terms of angles. Huh? And it's something which comes for free actually from just generalized abstract nonsense. This is category theory conference, so I can use this term. So just from generalized abstract nonsense, the spiders always come with decorations, phases. And so here I show it, like, for example, this is 90 degree, decorate 90 degree, and they just add up these phases. You can think of it as DNA, and they combine that DNA when they fuse. Yeah? So now I'm saying a lot here, but I'm going to use something, at least here. I'm going to consciousness research too, from all of this. So one thing I still want to say is, like, how do you represent classical versus quantum wires in this language? I mean, I can't go too deep on this, I spent too much time, but the way it works, and actually von Neumann already knew that, is if you represent like single wires, you can treat them as classical. If you represent double wires, you can treat them as quantum. And I'll show how the relationship is between. He did this when he invented density matrix. The moment he invented density matrix, von Neumann, I mean, he never said that. He must have realized that this was sort of the difference between classical and quantum. And so I mean, this is just what I'm showing here. Like, this is just a double thing. The double thing is just like 2 circuits side by side. And if you got phases, you actually have to conjugate. You have to conjugate. Anyway, so how do you go from classical to quantum? Give a spider. So this is a measurement in this formalism. It's just a spider which takes 2 wires in and 1 wire out. Can't be simpler. So measurement arises from composition. Measurement arises from composition. For people, and this is my big claim here in quantum foundations, all these people who have been studying measurements, you should have started from composition. This gives you a completely new view on the world. and I'm writing a paper with Hamza about like quantum foundations from composition rather than from measurement. Okay, this would be classical system encoded quantum system, and then if you first encode and then you measure, you do nothing. Huh? However, if you encode in one color and you measure in the other color, there is no relationship anymore between what goes in and what goes out. And that's like quantum uncertainty. That's quantum uncertainty. I mean, just to say that you can do cool stuff just with this stuff alone. Now, this is something I used to talk with Camilo. Camilo is Camilo, okay, you may remember. So the interesting thing is if you take a measurement and you measure phases, so like here a phase gate, then they vanish. Because I said the two sides have to be conjugated so they cancel each other out. And I've been talking with Camilo, but it has never resulted in a paper. We were really thinking about, this is not just Hilbert space, this can be any sort of structure of symmetries and whatever, this can live in any category. We're really thinking of this as a model of subconscious. So whatever's happening underneath here is sort of the subconscious, and then whatever happens there on top is the conscious. And Camilo had a lot of ideas about it, how it related to existing literature and stuff like that, but we never did anything with it. Right? Not yet, not yet. Okay, this is a reminder for you. You get it? Message? Okay, so all of this started in this paper, the X calculus, which was done in 2007. It's a sociology of science story, why this thing took so long to actually get absorbed in the community, but now it's basically mainstream in quantum technology, everybody's using it. So it's become complete mainstream. I mean, if you don't want to read a book, and you want to read about the X calculus in a few toilet sittings, I wrote this thing. These are literally the lecture notes from 2-hour lectures I gave here at this desk a month ago. This is literally it. And 2 toilet sittings is enough. I mean, it depends on the time you take. Right. So, and now, okay, back to consciousness. So I mean, I'm not gonna explain this paper because you can read it online, but the X calculus, which I just was describing to you, has been used as a model of consciousness by Camilo is here, by Harry is here, by Elias, who will be here in 2. He's the CEO of Continuum. He will be here in 2 hours or so. And he has a present for people. I mean, I think you also, Sean will explain that later. So oh, sorry. Okay, so they use this for consciousness. I don't know, is anybody going to talk about this today?
Andy, I think we'll talk about
Tomorrow. My tomorrow.
You? Okay. Tomorrow, okay. And then there is another paper. I mean, and here we actually, that's what, again with Camille and Ari, here we use ZW calculus, which is another graphical calculus. I'm not going to explain why, I don't have time. Also basically for a consciousness thing, and then we basically start to develop an axiomatic theory and derive stuff and things like that in consciousness. So these papers are out there, you can go and read them. I'll explain something else, and a completely different story now. What time did I start, do you remember?
25, I think. 25.
Oh, wow, I'm really, 25, wow, I'm really good. So this is Jim Lambeck. I mean, people who have some category theory background, they all know him, of course, a super famous category theoretician, a father of many things, like categorical logic, for example, due to him. So the whole sort of Curry-Howard-Lambeck thing and stuff like that, and lots of studying coalgebra, lots of things in category theory. But also, Jim was also the father of proper mathematical linguistics. So he wrote this paper in 1956, The Mathematics of Text, Sentence Structure. So text structure was somebody else. The Mathematics of Sentence Structure. And basically what he did there, I mean, there were some people who had done some stuff in that direction before, but this is like recognized as the main paper. He came up with a little algebraic system, which was in category theory terms a Coecke version of a monoidal, non-symmetric monoidal closed category, so bi-closed in both directions. You take the Coecke version, so it's really like an ordered monoid with left and right adjoints in the Galois sense. So that's what it is, that's what they used. And now they call it a Lambeck, a Lambeck poset or something like that, I think. Anyway, that's one thing he did. And I was good friends with Jim. I actually lived in his house in 2001 for a while. And So okay, now it'll come up in the story later. So I was back in Montreal 2005. Remember 2005, I always paid kindergarten quantum mechanics. And I had been a postdoc at Montreal before, so I was proudly saying, look people, category politicians. So you had Barr there, you had Mackay there, you had Joel there, you know, Makabouma, Ulrich was there. Like Montreal, ton and ton of category theoreticians. So I was talking about it, I said, hey, I present to you quantum teleportation with these nice string diagrams, look how simple it is. And then Jim was there in the audience, hey Bob, this is grammar. No Jim, this is physics. I mean, you should see this, like, these were all retired people, and it was not just my talk, it was like every talk. You start, and then you had like this snoring orchestra. But then the weird thing was, when you said something like this, they will come and they said something. Because they had kind of this system that they were sleeping or actually following the talk. So especially Lombeck and Barr did this sort of, it was really fun. Mackay actually stayed awake most of the time. He wasn't old enough. Anyway, so Jim said that, and Jim was right. Because in 1999 he had come up with a new kind of grammar system which were not monoidal closed categories, but which were really like non-symmetric compact closed categories. It has other names, ton of other names, that's how I prefer to call it. And he called this P-groups because this was really like a group where you have two inverses are not equal, and you also got a partial order structure, so the equations are rather inequalities and equalities. So that's called a pre-group. And pre-groups are basically compact closed categories. So he said, yeah, you have diagrams and you have cups and caps. Actually, that's my grammar system. It's the same thing. So it was right. Okay, I didn't care. I was going to revolutionize quantum mechanics with a new language. Definitely was not interested in linguistics or anything like that. But then 3 years later, there were a few people also in Oxford. This is Marie others are there, and she actually knew about this Lombeck stuff. I never knew even how this stuff worked. She knew this because Lombeck had asked her to pre-groups for Persian. He asked her to do pre-groups for Persian. And I mean, you don't, so I said it's a pre-group, think of it like as a group with left and right inverses, so it's an algebraic system. So the main important thing is that your calculations can be represented in the sort of cups and caps and stuff like that, mainly actually cups. They can be all with your derivation of grammaticality, because that's what this is, the derivation of grammaticality can be presented in these diagrammatic terms. So whenever you got a sentence, it comes with a diagram. A correct, grammatically correct sentence, it comes with a diagram which tells you how the different grammatical types interact with each other to form a sentence, a correct sentence. So that's all you need to know about that. There was also somebody else, Steve Clark, and he was starting to study like vector representations of meaning. Vector representations of meanings, what all the GPTs and blah 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 now use, all the large language models use that, all NLP uses vector representations of meaning. At the time this was still a purely academic discipline. There was no deep learning or revolution or anything like that, it was all purely academic. We're talking 2006, 2007 here. Steve was then faculty in Oxford in computer science, then he moved to Cambridge, then he moved to DeepMind, and then when I got my company position, I hired him back, so it's now working for me again. He's the head of AI of Quantinuum. Anyway, so there was these two things. Now you see, this is an algebraic, a compositional theory, if you want to, of a grammatical structure. Compositional theory of grammatical structure, and this is meaning in vector spaces. Meaning in vector spaces. The theory of meaning in vector spaces, and the inner product is very important because it gives you similarity of meanings. So it's really an inner product space if you want the Hilbert space. Whatever. A real Hilbert space maybe. So that's what we are studying. And then a very natural question comes up is how you combine grammar and meaning. How do you put them together? Because we as humans, we do that. If we hear a sentence which we never heard before, but it's grammatically correct, and we know the word meanings, we know the sentence meanings. That's something we always do. And the question is, how do you do it? There was no theory about it. There was no theory how to combine these two. And then, of course, let me go back. I mean, he kind of gave the answer, He kind of gave the answer. He basically said, okay, this was my theory of quantum. So you had this compositional structure on top of things which are supposed to live in a vector space, because quantum systems live in a vector space. So this was, and Jim said, okay, these wires of you, they're actually grammatical structure. So it was sort of, could it be possible that the diagrams we get from linguistics, if we sort of stick them like in quantum mechanics and interpret the stuff inside this vector space, that we get some kind of algorithm to compute meaning of sentences. I mean, that was mainly my only contribution to this paper, pretty much here. That I said, oh, this is easy combining. They're both compact closed categories. Problem solved. But it wasn't that easy. But that was my main insight. They're both compact closed categories of problem solved. But so we worked everything out, and we did experiments and stuff like that, and it worked. It perfectly worked, and when you understand it, it makes perfect sense. It's a natural way to combine meaning and grammar. Here is an example. So before my diagrams went bottom up, now they go top down for the simple reason that English is written top down. So that's the only reason. So here you got three meanings. These boxes are now meanings of words: Alice, hates, and Bob. You see, hates is like a compound type. It's compound type because transitive verb in grammatical theories is compound type. And then this was this little diagram I showed you before, this grammatical derivation. And it makes perfect. So here we got meanings of words. Here we got grammatical structure. We combine them in one whole. And whatever comes out here, we treat as the meaning of a sentence. So this is really like a quantum diagram. Eh? So these are actually the scripts you can think of as bell states. That's the way you can encode them. These are well, anyway. And the way you have to think about this is Alice. You got the meaning of Alice. Alice is fed into hates. Bob is fed into hates. They are entangled inside this composite system in a hateful way, and that this is what comes out here. The vector saying we have Alice and Bob, and we've entangled them in a hateful way. That's really what's happening inside. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense for much more complicated sentences too. This just scales. This whole interpretation I just gave you scales. And what you can do then is you take one sentence, Alice hates Bob, another sentence, Alice does not like Bob, and you can compute how related they are by taking an inner product. You see, I've got an inner product here on the side, and this is very interesting. And then in later work, we actually realized that our spiders, there are spiders. They were really very useful here too, because, for example, the relative pronoun, like she who hates Bob, was very naturally expressed as one of these spiders. I mean, I'm not going to go into that. You can again analyze it, and it's very natural to do that. I'll probably go a bit more into it later. I mean, this was very well perceived, but I had always told them, like Steve and Rus, don't mention quantum, never mention quantum, because otherwise we're going to be branded crackpots. And then the media showed up, of course. Suddenly we're quantum linguists, quantum linguistics, quantum mechanical words and stuff like that. Now recently things have changed. I'm now moving forward like 10 years. So Cambridge Quantum makes quantum natural language processing a reality. Continuum, okay, that's in between the name change, the first quantum natural language. So basically, meanwhile, and that's also the reason I actually moved into industry, we've actually used this correspondence between quantum and linguistics to basically start doing quantum natural language processing on a quantum computer. Interpretable AI, that's the word. Eh? I mean, we know what happened recently. Italy started to ban things, Belgium suicide, all the stuff like that. So the future is interpretable AI. This quantum-enabled interpretable AI. That's what we're doing. Quantum-enabled interpretable or explainable AI. That's what we're doing in this building on Beaumont Street. One of the things we're doing. And this is not the content of this talk, but for no surprise, we have this software package called Lambec. I mean, we know where it comes from, now with a Q. And you can basically download it, and you can basically start doing quantum natural language processing yourself tonight on one of the available IBM quantum computers, based on all this category theory I've been talking about. Because that's really what's been driving this. Okay, we move forward. Oh, I forgot to delete. Forgot to delete that slide. Doesn't matter. So now, I mean, I've always felt that this linguistic theory was not just about language, but language was about much broader cognitive processes. It's not just about language. Language is just one thing, and language, I think, is sort of like I'm going to explain later, kind of a weird thing. And like a little bit like disformed. Language is a little bit disformed cognitive capability, which I'm going to prove later. But our first attempt was showing that, for example, music, which is another sort of cognitive representation, we can basically use exactly the same machinery. So we adopted Lambek, and we took away the linguistic grammar and substituted them with musical grammars, which is a thing which exists. You can develop grammars for music in many different ways. We worked with the composer, Eduardo Miranda, and we created this thing called Quanthoven, which you can use too tonight. You can also download that and use that too. And now, sometimes when is something successful? What is the ways to validate that you did actually something useful? And in this case, it was very easy. We created a song that became #1 in classical charts. That's good. That's success, right? I mean, it's actually a bad song. Don't listen to me. So I don't know why it ended up #1. But you see, quantum computer music. Ludovico Quanthoven. Okay. Okay, here you got this one. So the sort of thing we do, is, in the quantum computer, we take this, such a piece of language, and then we turn this via sort of deformations, using Jack's calculus, stuff like that, into a circuit. So in our quantum computing experiments and our music experiments, language or music becomes a circuit. It's not stuff on a line anymore. It becomes a circuit. And in a way, when we start to sort of go from these sort of things, this is a very simple one, but using more complicated one, we start to have the impression that circuits actually became simpler than the initial thing. That circuits were actually kind of simpler and in a way more intuitive to read than actual language. And that's what I'm going to now. I'm going to forget about this. A new theory of language, and not just of language. I'm going to start with it as a new theory of language. That's the main thing actually I want to talk about today. But I need all the previous background to actually get here. So in this paper, The Mathematics of Text Structure, I came up with this idea of like representing the structure of text, including grammar, but also much more. There's much more going on in text than just grammar, structurally. You've got like you've got pronouns referring to each other and stuff like that. So there's a lot more going on to encode all this information in terms of circuits. I mean, this is quite an intuitive paper. Which actually appeared in a sort of festival for Lambek's 19th birthday. And then recently, with two people who now work with me, Vincent Wang and Jono, we actually started to develop a proper mathematical theory of language as text, as circuits. So basically what we started with, this is a grammatical representation of language. It looks a bit different than the grammars I've been presenting before. This is more like a Chomsky-like generative grammar, if you know what that is. It's a little more like Chomsky generative grammar. And we also do things like pronoun resolution, saying that it's him refers to Bob, that Alice and who and whatever blank thing going on is there is also referring to each other. So we put a few extra wires. So we crafted this grammar really to get a mathematical theorem spot on. This was really the minimal mathematical structure we needed to turn language into circuits. There's the minimum pieces of grammatical content we need. Now I'm going to show a little bit of an old-fashioned animation. So this is language, a bunch of words after each other, governed by a certain structure, which tells them how they interact. And then now we're going to start deforming. We basically throw all these pronoun links in the top part. You're not going to follow this. This paper is available now on the archive. It's called Distilling Text into Circuits. Now we move into 2 dimensions. We move a bit further into 2 dimensions, more 2 dimensions, and we end up with this circuit. I mean, now you should stare at this a little bit. So let me go back to the sentence. Sober Alice who sees drunk Bob laughs at him. I mean, you can read this in a number of ways, but definitely you know that Alice is so sober. You've got here Bob dances clumsily and she sees it. Huh? He's drunk, by the way, and she laughs at him. So all the information of the sentence is here. But, as it turns out, you can't reconstruct the sentence from this information. There's not enough information here to reconstruct the original sentence. But all the facts are here. Nonetheless, all the facts are here. So what we learned is, let me go to the first one, to the second one, that we can write text in different ways. Here you got one long sentence, here you got multiple short sentences, and they all become the same circuit. So these circuits ignore stylistic things. I mean, of course, all your period, there's no periods here, there's no relative pronouns anymore here, it's all gone. These are all, because these are things we need to put language on a line. Language doesn't want to be on a line, but the way we speak, word after word, it's the only thing we can do. We're forced to put in a line. And so we have to make decisions actually, and in different languages, we've made different decisions. You see, I really love you, or je t'aime. Yeah, I've only been talking about hate, so it's time to speak a bit about love too, I can say. I really love you, and je t'aime vraiment. They have different grammars, because the French and the English obviously made different choices. Obviously. Why do they make the same? There have been 100-year wars and stuff like that. But the circuit is just the same thing. You see, the circuit is just the same thing. There's no place for these choices anymore. Choices are right. And for people who know monoidal category, you can intuitively think about this. Like if you take your axiomatic of monoidal category, and all your coherence conditions and functoriality action, of course, if you do diagrams, it's all gone. If you move from one dimension to two dimension and use graphical calculus instead of like traditional set theory based categorical axiomatics, things are just much simpler. And this is kind of what's happening here too. By going to two dimensions for language, it becomes much simpler. And lots of bureaucratic choices vanish. And so, I mean, we as people, we obviously perfectly can think in parallel. Anybody who plays music knows that you can actually perceive all the different instruments at the same time. Otherwise, people couldn't be improvising. So you're actually perceiving, well, I mean, and this is like music like I compose. And these are lots and lots and lots of things in parallel. And I think I can think about them all in the same time. No problem, I can do that. But I can't speak two sentences at the same time. I can't sort of put words in parallel when I speak. So I think it's very interesting, and that actually brings us closer. I would say these circles are much closer to how we think. Language is, like I said, is a sort of deformity, which is a result of us being only able to say one word after another. But the real structure of language is higher. Oh, the real structure of meaning and how meanings interact is higher dimensional. The main structure of how meanings interact is definitely higher dimensional. Yeah. Any questions there, or anything to, any remarks? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about the meaning dependence with respect to the context. So often the meaning of a word depends on the context in which it's embedded.
Yeah, totally. So a very good question. So let me go. Yeah, I mean, I can just take any circuit. This is a good circuit. So in the beginning, when we were doing this Coecke, we still were following like the traditional notion of compositionality a la Frege. So it was actually, well, it's a sign of Frege, but it goes much. Dushko told me Dushko knows always who did things first. He said, oh, it goes much earlier than Frege. But so Frege's idea of compositionality is, if you know the meaning of the parts, and you know how the parts are put together, you know the meaning of the whole. So it's a bottom-up thing. It's a bottom-up thing. This is much more interesting. Because we actually, when we work with these things, we train them in context. So the meaning of drunk will be trained in the context of maybe this thing. And therefore, like you say, the meaning will be context dependent because you can train them in this bigger context of large text. And I've written a paper. It's called, it's not here in the slide, Compositionality as We See It. And I'm discussing that, like this sort of modern AI and also quantum computing, this notion of Frege compositionality is inadequate. It's completely inadequate because it has this bottom-up thing built inside, this context independence thing built inside. So I've defined something which is called Schrödinger compositionality, which is a generalization of the traditional notion of compositionality, and which still looks like this. It is fully compositional, but it's not anymore bottom-up. So you actually have meanings flowing from the whole to the parts as well as to the parts to the whole. So, and this sort of monoidal categories are a perfect modelization for that thing. They are not quantum is not at all suitable for like some notion of Frege compositionality, because if you take an entangled state, and you look at the parts have no meaning at all. So there's no way you can ever get the meaning of the whole from the parts. So we need a new, and I'm writing now a paper with Amar, Azamovic, and Katrina Pucchi, and Fabrizio Romano Genovese, and probably Jews, I'm not sure where it's going to be on it. Really about what I'm now talking in proper mathematical terms, in higher categorical terms, like really redefining compositionality in a way that allows for all these flows in all directions. So, very good question. We're actually literally, yeah, we're going to submit this to ACT for those people who are in that community. Right. No, I mean, I was talking about music, but for example, if you look at a circuit, okay, this is a circuit, this is taken from Once Upon a Time in the West. Like, this is a circuit associated with telling the story of a movie, and it's very easy to see that this sort of structure is much closer to a screenplay, if you want to say. Like, really the movie itself.
You got 10 minutes. to go.
Okay,
Including
perfect.
questions.
Oh, perfect, fantastic. I'll have a lot of time for questions then. So I don't know whether you intuitively see this, if you think of this as text, like Harmonica is the brother of Claudio, Frank hangs Claudio, Snake is the gang of Frank, Harmonica shoots Snakey, Harmonica shoots Frank. But that's a text. That's how I would read this text, this circuit as a text. It's just a text, it's just a bunch of sentences. But it's at the same time you can think of this as the movie itself, as the different scenes of the movie. I mean, these are pictures, but think of these as scenes following each other off. It's the same structure. The screenplay is like, these are the actors. So these are the actors in the movie. This is the scenes in which they play. And it's, so these text circuits are much closer to how we visually perceive the world. When I tell you the sentence, the tiger is chasing the zebra. What are you imagining now? Are you imagining the sentence, the tiger is chasing the zebra in terms of letters? No, you imagine the tiger is chasing the zebra, right? Imagine it. I mean, some people can't imagine out here. Most people would imagine this. And this is really what this passage from text to text circuit is. It's probably how we perceive text and translate it into whatever we imagine things to be. Right. And this kind of this is sort of something I'm now mostly working on, and that's what we call compositional intelligence, is to try to turn these ideas I've been talking about really in a model of intelligence or something like that. So one previous thing I did with Vincent One was basically using space, because space is obviously a very important part of our thinking and where we move into it and we visualize things into a spatial sort of thing. So with Vincent at some point, I'm going to go quick, we sort of made a linguistic theory of space, trying to understand how language transformed into spatial perception. Actually, when we did this work, we came up with the text circuits too. So, I mean, here are examples of spaces, of physical spaces. Metro line, this is a very bad representation of 3D, a chessboard. And then we built some theory, I'm going to go quick to leave time for discussion. We took a model subcategory of realm. We defined spatial relations in it, which is pretty straightforward all to do. And a spatial relation would be on a chessboard like moving right and blah blah blah. I mean, I'm not going to give the details here because that's not the main point. We sort of built this theory out, and then we said, okay, if I've got a sentence like this, the pawn next to a king that a knight can capture, we're basically able, using like diagram rewriting and stuff like that, to really single out, I mean, I'm not going to go in detail, to really single out which chess piece we were talking about, so that we really have linguistic theory of space. So you've got this sentence that translates then in the model to basically what it is saying. The pawn next to a king that a knight can capture is literally this one. So we were able to have this theory, and we did all the work with all these nice cups and caps. But then, when you do this in circuits, it's this one. Pawn next to king, knight can capture. And that's what I'm saying, how clumsy the language is that we use. This is such a clumsy thing. You need all these cups and caps to make all these things. You see how this is talking even to this thing. So everything is talking to each other. And that's sort of part of our linguistics. So if Chomsky says that language is like hardwired in our brain, that's complete nonsense. This stuff is not hardwired in our brain. I mean, because it's just, I mean, if that, we would be actually really badly made. We would be bad engineering. This would be really bad engineering if this is hardwired in our brain. And I wouldn't say that this is hardwired in our brain, this is hardwired in nature. This is really the structure of nature, these circuits. And it's, and of course, and it's as much the structure of our thinking as the world outside. Because what I'm describing here is something that's going on. So, okay, let's go back to nature. The ostrich next to a tree, the cheetah next to a grass can capture. That's the situation. I mean, Vincent came up with this example, and then told Vincent, a single cheetah never can take down an ostrich. Three can do it, but not single one. But okay, it's a bad example, but it illustrates the point. The ostrich next to a tree, the cheetah next to the grass can capture. Look at the complexity of this wiring here. Okay, that's a circuit. Cheetah next to grass. So I should have put an arrow here for the directionality. Ostrich next to tree, cheetah can capture. That's all that there is to it. That's all there is to it. So language is really a complete artifact due to our physiological capability to express things only linearly. Yeah? Okay. I mean, and you can mix up like spatial thing with like taste or color or smell. So here is the cheese inside the suitcase sticks. But this is more composite space where we both have smell going on and spatial relations. This is a bit, and diagrams again much simpler. And yeah, I mean, so this is our project. We're using all this quantum stuff to understand what's going on inside the skull. So we are just a skull with compositional stuff. And I'm on Twitter if you want to follow this sort of story. Thank you.
Okay, here we got 5 minutes for questions. Yeah,
So I had just 2 questions. So thank you very much for the talk. Is it like the spiders that you introduced related like to tensor networks? Can you is it a generalization of tensor networks?
Well, it's a very, no, it's not a generalization. It's a very, tensor network is a generalization of spiders.
Okay.
They're very, so tensor net, so that's a very good question. Because, okay, these are tensor networks. I'm also going to throw in Feynman diagrams in the discussion. These things are very different in the sense that Feynman diagrams and tensor network are a structure of a diagrammatic aid on top of Hilbert space. So you work in Hilbert space, and then they give you a way to represent things and make certain calculations easier, guiding calculations. They have no existence in their own right. They don't exist on their own. They can't exist on their own. Here we're talking about a general substitute in Hilbert space, which means that you forget about Hilbert space when you work with them. So they're very specific tensors. They're actually tensors which are built on, like the Coecke tensor. They're basically Coecke tensors in hierarchy. And I didn't mention it here, but Harney, for example, and some other people, I don't know whether okay, I'll say Lia and Razin too, because they also proved complete and stuff. So we have a theorem that any equation you can derive in Hilbert space, you can derive from these spiders. I mean, I didn't mention it either. It's a highly non-trivial thing, but it's called completeness. So it's a complete axiomatization of Hilbert space. Equationally complete. It's about equations. Equationally complete axiomatization of Hilbert space. And we got some more calculi, and Razin and Leah also proved completeness for that. So we're basically working with substitutes of Hilbert space here. An alternative language, not a diagrammatic aid.
And then my second question is related to this. So how you said you learn the compositional structure. You learn the compositional structure, right? When you say learn, like for example, have a text, you want to do an LP, like you want to be able to structure like some concepts on this text, and can you learn the compositional structure?
Well, that's a good question. So far, we haven't done that. Am I right? So far, we got a pipeline now. You can Razin part develop that. We take a pipeline, and it spits out a circuit.
Kind of what? So you already have your you have your
text.
This is basically in the latent space of your NLP, what you're talking about. So you have a compositional structure and some concept, but you assume that they are.
No. What I'm talking about is we generate the circuits using a parser. We identify the mathematical structure, and we have a pipeline now which generates the circuits for arbitrary text. Okay, then you're going to start doing things with them. And then we then start training the meanings in the circuits. We can't use existing vector representations or vector embedding like glove because they give you vectors. We need gates. We need gates. So we're now developing this technology on how to actually basically learn the gates within context. I mean, this is all entirely new. Nobody has done this before, so we need a big team to do that. You have something to add because you're actually practically doing that. That's it. Yeah.
So, and just to finish with this remark, are you aware about like this to work on like tensor network for MIT?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, we're trying to do the same stuff both classically and quantum.
Okay.
And then these circuits are really hard. We actually expect possibly exponential quantum speed up for tasks because of their complexity, but we're at the same time trying to do the classical thing too, because quantum computers aren't as big yet, doing exactly techniques like you mentioned.
Yeah, okay. Now go.
Towards the end of your slide, towards the end of your slide, you had a picture of the kind of color or older, like cube kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are you meant to kind of combine this linguistic thing with the conscious content?
Yeah, so we have previously had a paper called Interactive Conceptual Spaces. So we start from Garden-Force conceptual spaces, and we build a category around this so that we can use the same machinery, not just for vectors, but for those sort of concept spaces. And you can combine these concept spaces, for example, with the physical spaces. So you're building a representation of maybe smell, sound, visual input, and so you're constructing a more sort of cognitively faithful space of meaning than what people usually use in AI. So we've been actually, Sean has been in a project where they actually train a qubit to learn concepts, and Razim too. So we're actually trying to learn these concepts using these spaces on quantum computers now, and on classical computers.
I think we've probably got to move on. Let's thank all again.